States of America. Whew. Okay, at this time, if Pastor Andrew Brammer with Assembly of Christians could open us up in prayer.
Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for this opportunity to be here this evening to offer prayer for the township. Father, I pray that you would be at work, that you would bless the township, that you would provide wisdom for the board here with everything that comes before them here this evening, that they would make good decisions, and that you would sovereignly watch over the outcomes, Lord, and ensure that they are good. And Father, I just pray that ultimately you would be honored within our community, and it's in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for being here. Okay. At this time, we have item number 2, approval of the agenda. And I'd like to add Sheriff Troy Goodnup to that agenda. We'll put him under presentations, so 4A.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended. Support.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Gore. Any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item number 3, the consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends to approve and place on file A, minutes from the August 15th, 2023 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board, and B, the deficit elimination plans, and those are 11 separate plans.
Motion to approve the consent agenda
Support.
as submitted.
Okay, motion supported by Ms. Januzak. Discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. At this time, if Sheriff Goodenough would like to come on up. Appreciate you being here.
Well, good evening. As I said, I try to get down to the townships as much as I can with 15 townships and other cities and villages. It's challenging at times. So I told the undersheriff he could have September off for Bedford Township and that I would come tonight. So thanks for amending the agenda for that. And hopefully you had the opportunity. I know our administrative assistant did push out the stats. Not sure if you had an opportunity to look at them. And also with that, I had her send out the data for the Bedford DDA, the speed signs that are at Secor and Stearns there. And he now, the lieutenant that's assigned down here on day shift, is downloading that information every month. So we're going to do our very best to get that information to you at least by the third Tuesday of each month so that you can take a look at that. But I think it speaks volumes, and I want to talk about that if I could, please. As to the number of cars that travel through that intersection and the percentage that are going under the posted speed limit. Now you're going to see on there 88 miles an hour is the highest speed, is because we set the highest speed at 88. When we had it unlimited, we found that people, specifically motorcycles, were seeing how fast they could get it to register. So we thought that by putting this at the limit of 88, it may reduce some of that. So we can go even lower if we feel the need to do that. But, you know, it's worth mentioning, I think we had 7 vehicles that were at that speed. So, and again, I think it just shows the volume, as I said, of the vehicles that travel through there. And I personally believe that the speed signs are effective in doing what we want them to do. Now, one of the things that I want to do in the coming months is we still have a number of traffic crashes in that area. And we're able to pull that data and determine what the causation of each crash is. And I just want to look at that and see, is it people making left-hand turns? Is it people entering the roadway from a private drive? Not saying that we have a solution to correct bad driving behavior, but we can surely direct our resources and our enforcement to hopefully reducing those accidents once we have that data available. So that's kind of what one of the things that we are going to use this data for as far as at that intersection. And I'll move on unless somebody has questions related to the speed sign data.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I think it needs to be brought back up to this board of other areas to do this type of enforcement.
Yeah. And you know,
Yeah,
that.
data, I would say, not enforcement, but data,
Yeah, well, and
we should
again, what
install.
this is nice is I think, we know that it reduces the speeding in that area 25% just by putting them up. And I think we can show that the vehicles aren't speeding in that area. Now, are they slowing down before they get to the sign? Who knows? But they're going through that heavily populated area at or below the posted speed. So, and absolutely, I do think there's other areas in the community where those signs could be effective. We're more than happy to look at that for you through crash data as well.
I have something here, Troy. On your signs that you have the threshold at 88, that's like what it records for you guys. But on the sign itself, once you get over 50, it says 55. That's the highest it'll go.
Oh, it is now. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's been that the whole time.
Yeah,
Because when you first put them in, I tried to see how high I could get them to go. So 55 it tops out at. No matter what, it'll flash 55, 55, slow down.
I was told it was 88, so I'm glad.
Well, on your, because even when you had that one where assuming it was a motorcycle was what, 100 and some.
Yes.
So, I mean, obviously the sign can't go that, so it was
Right.
flashing 55, but you get the data, so your data will register the speed limit, but
Correct.
all the signs, they just top out at 55.
Oh, okay, and I didn't know that. The lieutenant informed me today that they lowered it to 88, so if I see that, so,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I get some, but again, at least we know what the speed is, right?
Yep.
And you're right, we're gonna record the data over 88, and obviously now, what I said is incorrect, it's only gonna show you up to 55, but we're recording the actual data. And again, it just shows you how much activity goes through that intersection. And while we're talking about that intersection, and I know Supervisor Peroni is aware of it, we have the flock cameras coming for that intersection. I'm told within a couple weeks they should be deployed. So, and that'll gather license plate data for the vehicles that travel all 4 points. So, you know, one of the things that we experience frequently is thefts from Tractor Supply. Turn around, they head south on Secor. Well, now we'll be able to grab that license plate data off those cars. Frequently, they'll tell us, well, it was a blue Chevy pickup or a Dodge Avenger or whatever, but we don't have a plate. Now we'll be able to gather that data, and we'll be able to hopefully track these individuals down.
Is that the same system Toledo has been using?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, because I know it was very beneficial. Huge
It is.
down here.
It is very beneficial, and keep in mind, and this is one of the reasons I don't want to get too far off base here with your meeting, but, you know, anywhere in the country that has these flock cameras, if we have a situation and we're looking for a red Dodge Challenger, whenever we can pull all that data out of the whole country of every red Dodge Challenger that passed one of those readers. And if in Toledo we have one, well, there's a high probability that could be our offending vehicle. But I think we're going to see it's going to be a tremendous asset to us. As you know, when I first took over as sheriff, my long-term goal was to put a camera at every port of entry into Michigan from Ohio. And I still am working on that. It's just the funding mechanism that's part of that.
Well, I can tell you from a DDA aspect, it's the business owners within that. There was so much theft at one time. I mean, there's talk of closing a couple of different businesses. So, I mean, that happens throughout the country.
Absolutely.
If business loses enough money, they close their doors. So, you know, this is part of the reason of us stepping up, you know, to do something and deter it, and, you know, we got to.
I think at the end of the day, once people get the idea that if you're going to commit criminal activity in that corridor, even north, right, Trustee Bruning, up at your place, something happens, we can pull all the vehicles that went southbound from Secor Road.
The other day, they heard the numbers up nationwide, over $85 billion in thefts, and they're saying, I forget what year it was, only not too far out, they were talking about being at least 115 or more billion.
And we know that affects us as consumers, right? Everything we buy, from a pack of gum to gas.
Not just that, look at the insurance cost.
Absolutely, right. So we're excited when them get up, and we'll be able to give you some data on that as well. Like I said, there's a lot of good things happening in Bedford Township that I think the residents should be proud of from you as a governing body in the DDA and everybody to put the resources available to make Bedford a safe place to live. So, real quick on the stats, we handled 799 calls for service in Bedford Township. Of those, 169 was traffic stops, and we wrote a total of 139 incident reports, 11 arrests, and the deputies were out of the contract 1.75 hours. So, as you know, we keep a close eye on that out-of-contract time. We think it's important. So, unless there's something more specific that you'd like me to go over, that's all I have for you this evening.
Anybody have any comments, questions?
Yeah, I have, on a side note, Troy, what's going on with Telegraph Road corridor hotels and our presentation on that?
I think they're still looking at, I know the undersheriff's been working on that. Things have slowed down in there. I can tell you over the weekend, we did rescue a human trafficking victim out of there from California. We're still working on that. So as far as the directed patrols, they've not been as strict over there. As you know, when we were hitting it very hard, it just quit. The activity there stopped. So we're hoping to pick that back up. It's just, I'll be frank with you, calls for service. As you can see, your numbers are staying quite high.
And then, also for the future, like potentially shutting them down, having them declared a nuisance.
Yes.
I know the prosecutor and Phil, whatever has to be done on our end to help make that happen. It's just. And
I think, well, I shouldn't say, I know the undersheriff, they're still trying to collect data. If you remember, Detective Hooper was assigned down here. Well, and he went to Ida as a school resource officer. Well, he's now back as the detective sergeant. We're having some changes in operations. So we're going to pick that back up. And we have a new prosecutor, so we have to bring him up to speed on this as well. So
okay. Thanks, Troy.
just trying to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row. I think you're going to get one shot at this.
Yep.
And we just don't want to make a bad decision.
I think if Toledo can do it, we can do it.
Oh, I do. I believe so. I concur as well.
I think the process is being done. You know, we've identified the problem. You guys have hammered on it. If the nuisance isn't cleaned up, we have a meeting, and after that, you continue in the steps, and I think that's right. That's how we would protect ourselves, I would assume.
Yeah, and they just want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. You know, like we told you last year, we just don't want to throw the dice and say we hope it happens. We want to have a good, solid case so that if we do shut them down, it's for 365 days.
Works for me.
So, and I'll make sure that on the October meeting, either I or the undersheriff will have an update on where we're at with that.
Thanks, Troy.
Okay? All right, well, thank you for
Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, item 5 is public comment. Comments limited to 5 minutes for board agenda items only. Just state the agenda item you'll be speaking on. Okay, seeing no comment. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding, Lamar. Come on. No, come on. All right. I'll add 2 more seconds. Trudy, add 2 more seconds.
Members of the board, Lamar Frederick, 3254 Deer Creek Drive, Lambertville. I'm here to address 8G and H, each of those. 8G, this is the standard AIA architect retainer agreements that's used by almost every architect and engineer doing work such as that required by the township. However, you should note, and if you haven't, the township does not receive anything out of this other than the work and a license for all the documents that are prepared, even though you're paying a substantial fee for their production. The contract says that they own them. You get a license to use. I suggest that you might want to consider that this become a document called work for hire, meaning you end up owning them because you paid for it and you paid for the work. They're only using standard engineering expertise, and they have 3 subcontractors, and I know what they're doing in terms of putting documents together. But you should own the documents. They should be in your building department, and they should be ours. You're paying for it with tax dollars. As to H, the notes indicate both properties that have been secured by the township are going to be appraised. In my view, this should have all been done before you bought it, so that you could have framed a purchase arrangement rather than the way it was purchased and you plunked in $125,000 on it. Some of you have indicated you're not going to put another dime in this project, but they're asking you tonight to approve $4,000. So you're in for $1, in for £1. Who knows what the next request will be? What's the interest in MDOT and the Monroe County Road Commission in this agreement? Last I knew, the township owned the property. The rumor is that the supervisor wants to have the value of the purchase put into the grant amount. Now, I read these documents probably a little differently than you do because of my training and my experience. Who gets the sales money if these properties are sold? You're paying for an appraisal, but if it becomes part of the grant goes to the Monroe County Road Commission, not to you. You don't have a dime in this grant that comes to the township. It goes to the Road Commission. So if they get the sales receipts, does the MDOT get the sale? Has anybody asked what their interest is in this project? There was a rumor at one time I heard that the Monroe County Road Commission expected to get half the sales proceeds of any sale of this property because they put in their half of the money toward the project as well as you. I'm not sure what oh, by the way, there's something in here about Temperance Township. I don't know what that is. Did you guys see that? Catch that? I just thought that was kind of interesting, got confused. So in any event, it's not clear what the intention of the township, MDOT, and Monroe County Road Commission as a group is involved in this. And I think you better find out what's going on before you approve this so that everybody knows where everyone stands. And do we own the property if, in fact, the cost is put into the grant and the grant goes to the Monroe County Road Commission? I don't know. The whole question becomes, can the township have its cake and eat it too? Thank you.
Any more comments?
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance, 8F. The Wellings do a great job, but I questioned on the packet the wording of Bedford, since that doesn't exist as such in Monroe County. However, Bedford Township as a governmental entity does. 8G, I still believe we're going to find placing this building on this property will not be conducive to the other operations that take place, especially with the training tower. So I'm hoping we've saved some ARPA money so we can pay to get that moved into a really great spot. 8H, there is plenty of paperwork. This is just a bit of what I have. And there has been much discussion on not following through with this project, otherwise known as the roundabout. However, here we are again. This has to do with attempting to manipulate someone else paying for tearing down the tavern. This process seems to be almost as underhanded as the sale of the BBA building. If you recall, this began with Mr. Peroni signing the purchase agreement, and the legal team had to undo that. We have learned that the Road Commission doesn't need our permission to do the project. So my concern, the board has said they would spend no more money. It was pulled from the agenda the last time it came to this board in a real big hurry in an attempt to manipulate things under the table and behind closed doors. But from this perspective, we have already wasted a whole lot of money and time for no reason if the Road Commission is going to do it anyhow. We have a piece of property that has been promised to one particular business. That was to keep him quiet so he would not complain about the process. We have failed to do a full study to find another option, which there is now that we have that property, because we don't have to make circles. We should be able to make a little bit of a diagonal. And furthermore, the paperwork reflects Temperance Township. Now I've got to question the intelligence of the group that's putting this all together. I'm going to ask the board again, as we have in the past, do what you said you were going to do. You promised you would spend no more money on this joke. Thank you.
Any more comments?
Josh Nudicor, 7948 Wiseman Road, Lambertville, just about the roundabout. So from my understanding, there was money that was already spent as far as doing a study or some other preliminary work of some sort. If we're paying for an appraisal, why are we throwing more money at it when we already thrown money at it? So all I want to say is just don't waste any more money on it.
Okay, any more comments? Okay. All right, moving on to new business, 8A, vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberger.
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $49,921.71. Fire District Fund, $26,842.72. Fire Equipment Fund, $3,837.11. Downtown Development Authority, $2,609.21. Library Operating Fund, $5,669.16. American Rescue Plan, $7,180.38. Bedford Drive SAD, $1,740.39. Stonebrook-Wood SAD, $2,438.40. DDA Construction, $2,613. Building Department, $1,719.67. Sewer O&M Fund, $514,227.69. Trust and Agency Fund, $341.92 for a grand total of $619,128.49.
Support.
Okay, motion in support of Ms. Januzak. Any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Janusek?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Okay, the motion passed aye. I don't think I said aye. The motion passed 7-0. Item 8B, approve the 2023 streetlight assessment resolution.
So before you is the streetlight assessments. These are all the SAD streetlights in the different subdivisions. If there's no question, I'd make a motion that we approve the 2023 streetlight assessment resolution as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion in support of Ms. Januzak. Any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Janusek?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8C, approve tax mills resolutions for the 2023 tax roll.
Do you want me to do that? Or?
Yeah, if you want to.
So these are the operating levies that go onto the taxes in the winter. We have to approve them before we can assess them on the taxes. We have our assessor goes through and fills out our form, and then we have to, as a board, approve them. So if nobody has a question, I can make the motions. I'll make a motion to approve the millage for the general operating levy of .7654 mils as presented to be levied on the 2023 winter tax roll.
Support.
Okay, motion in support of Ms. Hirschberger. Any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Janusek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
I'll make a motion to approve the millage for the fire operating levy of 1.7359 mils as presented to be levied on the 2023 winter tax roll.
Second.
Okay, motion in support of Ms. Hirschberger. Any discussion? Okay, just call the roll, please.
Ms. Janusek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Make a motion to approve the millage for the police levy of .3864 mils as presented to be levied on the winter 2023 tax roll.
Second.
Go ahead.
Motion in support of Mr. Steiner. Any discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Janusek?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Make a motion to approve the millage for the fire equipment levy of .4899 mils as presented to be levied on the 2023 winter tax roll.
Support.
Okay, motion in support of Ms. Hirschberger. Any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Make a motion to approve the millage for the library levy of .2500 mils as presented to be levied on the 2023 winter tax roll.
Second.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Steiner. Any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 8D, approval to hire part-time firefighters. Chief? It's good to see you.
You do, thank you. Good evening. So as you know, in public safety, the amount of applicants that everyone has seen is going down. So we are pleased tonight to be able to present 5 part-time applicants in front of you. 3 of which did come from our EMT class that we just finished last year. So putting a little bit of time, a little bit of effort is working for right now. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll present the second plan, part of the plan to you. But as of right now, that first piece is starting to work. Starting to get people in right from high school, starting to train them, getting them worked up, and then hopefully retaining them for long periods of time. The 2 that we have in front of you, Mr. Floyd and Mr. Hogue, are both fully trained EMT firefighter 1 and 2 in the state of Michigan. They would be coming on with your appointments next week, and they would start their orientation process immediately. The other 3 did complete their EMT with us, and what we would be doing is sponsoring them to fire school. What we can do with this is what we have found in the past. If we have, we've seen a higher rate of success in the fire program than what we have the EMT program. So when we're bringing them in as EMTs, we have a high level of surety that we will see them pass out of the fire program. So what we're looking to do is bringing on these 5 people starting September 11th. Again, 2 are going to be fully qualified. The other 3 are going to be starting their medical orientation while they're in the fire training. That way, when they get done with fire training, we can start their fire orientation and have them fully trained within a few months after that. So any questions on any of them? They did all complete the background screening, and everything did come back successful.
Any questions, comments? Mr. Steiner?
So by adding these, as you said, obviously we know that fire department staffing across the country is low.
Yes.
But by bringing these on for you to your goal of X number, where does this put us? Is this going to put you back up to 80%, 70%?
So what this will do is 2 of the gentlemen that are fully trained, what we'll do is we'll put them into positions automatically. What we don't want to do is not leave any spots open for our non-regularly scheduled part-time members, because we want to make sure that they still have involvement in the department. So we don't want to fill each position unless we are starting to get low response, low turnouts, and then we will have to keep adding people on. Just like we did with the last full-time hire, as we do see a decrease in participation, that's when we'll have to start increasing staffing, just so we can keep that level of service. But with the hire of these 2, I'll say for right now, that will bring us back up to where we were. We did just have 3 part-times drop down from scheduled to non-scheduled, and that is because they hit that magical age of 26 where they needed to find insurance. And there's a couple things that we're going to try and do with our insurance company also, just to see if we can work stuff out, because we are seeing that. But no, this will put us back up to that level where we're comfortable. We know that we will have the majority of the shift staffed, and then the remainder of the shifts come from the non-scheduled part-time employees.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, I look for a motion.
I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve to hire part-time firefighters, the 5 candidates as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Bruning, and I would just friendly amendment to add the starting date of September 11th.
That's fine. You good with that, Todd?
I'm fine with that.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item 8E, approval to pay certain invoices due to the election delaying the November meeting. Ms. Hirschberger?
So due to our next meeting being 4 weeks out, there's bills that are going to come in. I don't want to have to pay late charges for those, so I just wanted to know if the board would approve us paying those invoices, and then at our next meeting, which would be November 14th, those invoices along with any current ones would be on the approval list.
Comments, questions? Do you want to just have her email out to the board the ones we're going to approve or pay as we're doing them, or?
I can have Bob do that, just send out the ones that
You
are
guys are
going to be paid.
aware.
It'll be anything that's going to be late past that point, or we're going to get some kind of a fee if we pay it past that point.
So if Bob sends it out, and then you guys do the cross checks.
Fine.
That way you don't see a statue of myself come through the bills. You guys won't know. So. Okay, all right.
Do we need
A
a
motion?
Make a motion that we approve bills that would be due before the November 14th board meeting that would have a late fee or be late to be paid ahead of time.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported, Ms. Januzak. Any more discussion? Okay. Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8F, renew the agreement for video production services. Ms. Hirschberger?
So this is the same contract we've been using. You can clearly see at the top it says this agreement is by and between Bedford Township and our address, and then further in the contract it refers to Bedford and then the provider, and that's throughout the whole agreement. It was put on or put together by an attorney years ago when we first started using this contract. The only thing that was changed was the amount, and the amount would include all the park board meetings that are now being taped, so we don't have a second invoice. And then there's a 2% increase. George's contract has not been increased since 2019.
I'll just add a couple things. I just want to say when we first started this, we were kind of investigating. I did get another quote to just do our meetings at $100,000 a year. George is on top of every meeting. They're always broadcasted. We did have hiccups in the beginning, but he's just solid for us. And it might seem like a lot to videotape meetings, but it is more than that. He does a lot of meetings. He is available if anybody is interested in doing something else. I know I've done informational programming a couple different times with George, and so I think for the cost at $36,000 a year, you're not going to find it anywhere else, not with
35.
his professional background and the service he provides for the township. So, no-brainer for me. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add or make a motion?
Just real quick, Rudy, you mentioned the 2%.
Yeah, so this
Am I missing it?
35,000 would be all of the park board costs plus a 2%. So what you're probably missing is the cost that he's been charging for the park boards.
Okay, so you're saying the 2% is already included in this?
Right.
Okay, that's what threw me, because
Yes.
I was looking for it to say plus
No.
2%. Okay.
And we did budget the 35,000. We're not going over what we've budgeted for the contract.
If nobody objects, I'll make a motion to approve the agreement for the delivery of professional services between Bedford Township and George W. Welling in the amount of $35,000 which includes the park board meetings as presented.
Support.
Motion and support of Mr. Bruning. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 8G, approve agreement with Jim Jacobs Architect for the maintenance building project. Mr. Jacobs?
Evening, Chair and fellow board members. I'm here tonight to answer any questions you might have regarding the contract. If there's anything you want me to go over, I'd be glad to.
So like on page 2, Article 1, architecture's responsibility. So when it says you will consult with the following specialized consultants for this project,
Yes.
do you pay for this out of the
Yes,
180?
that is part of the fee.
Okay, so that's part of the 180, okay.
So approximately 80,000 of the fee is related to mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineering, structural engineering, written specification, manual, project manual, we call it, for the project. And those are the 3 consultants that we would work with, but you'll be dealing with our office. We just work with those specialty engineers through our services and providing that for you.
Like, I guess if you could do this just for the community and for the board, because we don't deal with a lot of these projects.
Sure.
And, some people would say, wow, that's a lot of money for somebody to manage your project. When you're going to have a construction manager company you hire, they're going to oversee the project. So I guess walk us through, your whole process of, the project.
So we architects in general break a project down into 5 phases of service. There's schematic design and design development is phase 1. You've kind of already completed that. That work is also part of this agreement. So the initial commitment that you had made for those design sketches is part of that fee that's in here. So it's just one fee with this contract. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is construction documents, which is about 40% of the fee in the time putting together the CDs, which includes the drawings as well as the specification or project manual that outlines the bidding procedures, the payment procedures, the insurance requirements, all the contract required information for contractors to bid your project and execute the work when they go through that bidding process, which is the 3rd phase. I guess I combine phase 1 and 2. There's design, schematic design, construction documents. And then phase 4 is bidding, and phase 5 is construction administration. And so generally it breaks down into a 15, 15, 40, 5 and 25% is the way that fee structure breaks down on a traditional basis for how much it would cost for each portion of the service for that overall fee. If that kind of gives you a little better picture of how that process works. And then from the construction administration standpoint, we would review all the pay applications before forwarding it on for payment and for your review, and look to make sure that all of the proper waivers are in place, and the final verification of any lien waivers would be the township's responsibility, but we make sure that the paperwork is in proper order for you to be able to make that phone call to verify that it's been properly signed by because that's an owner requirement. Didn't used to be, but with problems with falsification and waivers, it became a responsibility of owners to follow up on the authenticity of those signatures so that you're protected in that regard. Bonded project, that's not quite as important because the bond insurance that you'd be paying for would cover payment in full to all of the suppliers and subcontractors. And I'm assuming that with this project, that will be a requirement in the end because of the funding sources and other things that will be there. to require that.
Could you address Mr. Frederick's concerns?
So to address the concerns of document ownership, there are several reasons for that. I don't know all of the legalities behind it. Went to architecture school. I leave the legal aspects to Mr. Goldsmith and other attorneys to figure out the ins and outs of all that. But basically, my understanding is that the documents are tools of instruments of service, and they're specifically designed for the codes to date and the specific site constraints. So taking this set of drawings and using it on a different site opens up liability to us and the engineers that are involved in the process, and potentially you as owners as well, when it gets used for a purpose other than what it was intended for. So the ownership and the control over how they get reused in the future remains with the design professional. The use of those for your project is solely yours. And that's the main purpose of that, as I understand it. There are ways to work with that. There's generally cost involved with that, and probably some waivers so that we can protect that risk down the road for reuse of those in an improper fashion, which we have no control over if we don't own those documents.
I can't imagine the township would ever have a use of reuse for those documents. But.
And if you did, then you come back and we look at the current codes, make sure that those documents would be ready for that, and then could reproduce them at a much lower rate than what this would be for that reuse for another project. Once we assess those site conditions specifically and address any site-specific issues, but then the reuse of those documents could come into play, which would help you with future costs if you did pick a different site to build the same kind of a structure.
So, Mr. Supervisor.
Go ahead. He beat me to it. I was going to ask for you to weigh in since you're the legal guy.
Okay, thank you. So, Jim, would you have an objection if we amended the standard AIA form to state that the deliverables would become the sole property of the township, but the township would agree not to reuse those instruments for another project or another location, such that we get what we pay for. They're ours to use for this project and this project alone on this property at this site, and agree that it wouldn't be used for any other site or any other purpose without a new review by you or another architect. I understand what you're saying. You wouldn't want those plans, prints, specifications to be used by Bedford Township or anyone else. You wouldn't want us to sell those prints to some other unit of government for use at another site because the codes change. They may be different where they're used, and you don't want that liability. We did it with the library project. Lamar and I spoke prior to the meeting, and that worked just fine. So I wouldn't, if the board is inclined to approve what you have presented for them to consider tonight, I wouldn't stand in the way of that so long as we can amend the document such that the township is protected in that regard and the documents that we pay for become our documents. Does that sound fair and reasonable to you?
Yeah, I would want to run that past my insurance provider and my legal counsel just to make sure the language is correct. But on the surface, from what you've described, I have no problem with that. We have done that in the past. But I just want to make sure that the language is right, so I'm sure we can work that out pretty easily.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Do we need to table this then while they figure it all out?
Well,
bring it back?
That probably would be the best thing because it's going to take a little bit of wordsmithing, and it has to be an arm's length agreement. And so Jim wants to run it by his insurance carrier, which is a reasonable request, and his legal counsel, which is also a reasonable request. So I would prefer that it be tabled so that we can come back to you with that modified language. So everybody's in agreement, everybody's on the same page.
And I think that works. And then also, I was able to obtain a quote for the survey services that'll be required from Manick and Smith, which wasn't to me in time to get on this agenda. So it'll actually bring your whole picture together. That was handed out to staff this evening. So that can be, jointly, you'll know the whole picture then for the services you'll have to hire Manick and Smith for, plus our scope of work at that time then.
Always better to know the whole picture.
Yep.
So, yeah, that would be my recommendation, that we table a decision on this particular agenda item until we have the document amended so that it meets the needs of the township as well as the architect.
You looking for next meeting or the first meeting in October?
What's our time? What's the board's pleasure, I should ask, in terms of timing? It might be better to go to October because we're going to have to coordinate among insurance and another attorney. If that doesn't delay this project or cause a problem in furthering it, I wouldn't think that it would.
No, I think it'll be, when would the next time be for submitting to be on the next agenda?
There's no way to approve it and get done what he's talking about. There's no way to move forward. I mean,
it wouldn't be preferable. What if, for instance, his insurance company says no way, no how, and then we're at a stalemate? Then we have to then the board should be able to review it again. So I think it's better to table it until we know how his side of his people, so to speak.
you see us still being able to start construction in spring?
Yeah.
That's the biggest. We're not going to.
Yeah, I don't want
I think
to delay
do it fairly
that
quickly, but I don't know, schedules from.
We just have a month till our next meeting, so I mean.
So we have next week, the 12th, if you want it on the 19th.
Okay.
And then if you want it on the first meeting in October, the 3rd, you would need it to us by the 26th of September.
Okay.
Let's do the 3rd of October if no one objects, and if Jim, if you don't object. That I just don't want to cut short time on a response from your insurance carrier. I agree with Lamar. We did it with the library project. I think it's important. So if we can have a meeting of the minds on it, that would be preferable.
Yeah, I think the way that you've described it, to me, that's the understanding that's trying to convey, is that it's for that specific. So with those, and then basically all that does is gives you the CAD files and the PDFs for version of the drawing, which you're going to get PDFs anyhow, and the printed copies. So it brings into play the AutoCAD drawings files.
We're not going to sell it to somebody else, but we want to own it because we're paying for it.
Yep. Always the
You
question.
need a motion to table it? We'll move that we table 8G to the October 3rd board meeting.
Support. Motion is supported by Mr. Bruning. Any more discussion?
Before you move on, I guess I just ask, are there other questions or things that we would need to
Lamar,
clarify?
anything else? Say it now.
Yes, one thing, but I'll wait.
Don't wait till next meeting, and then we got to table it again. Okay. All right, motion is supported. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Gore.
Aye.
Mr. Bruning.
Aye.
Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mr. Montroy.
Aye.
Ms. Janasek.
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni.
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Thank you. Okay, item 8H, approval of an appraisal needed for the roundabout. Mr. Goldsmith, if you'd like to kind of give a little background as to why we're here with this, I'd appreciate it.
On the appraisal issue?
Yep.
Yes, I will. So part of this you can blame me for, because I have insisted from the very beginning, if this roundabout is actually built, that Bedford Township not own the dirt upon which the roundabout is constructed for liability reasons. We're not in the road business. Our insurance doesn't cover us for being in the road business or owning roads. That's not within any of our statutory duties, whereas the Monroe County Board of Road Commissioners is in the road business. And at first they were resistant to it. I don't know really why, but they were. And so me, as your legal advisor, wants to transfer the property that's going to be used for the roundabout to the road commission. That'll be part of their road inventory. They will be responsible for maintaining the roundabout, and they will be responsible for defending any road liability cases that might arise in connection with the use of the roundabout. So that's why. I have spoken with Al Pryor, your deputy supervisor, because I wanted to understand why we need the appraisal. We purchased the property that will be used for $65,000, if memory serves me correct. So some of that, we purchased other property that we will own and that we hopefully will, after the project is completed, if the board elects to go forward with it, that we will be able, hopefully, to sell. We haven't promised it to anyone. We haven't entered into a purchase agreement with anyone. And that the sales proceeds from the sale of that property will not be shared with the road commission. That's property that we bought. We're in essence transferring or donating to the road commission the ground that's going to actually be used for the roundabout. So that's primarily for liability purposes, as I just explained. So my understanding is that MDOT requires an appraisal. Now, Al and I talked about it. I said, well, we have a purchase price, and that establishes the fair market value at the time of the sale, as viewed between a willing seller and a willing buyer. But this is a MDOT requirement. They want to have it appraised, so it's part of the overall cost of the project and so forth. So that the purchase of that real estate is part of our contribution to this project. $175,000 from the road commission, $175,000 from Bedford Township. That was the original agreement. So that's why we're looking at an appraisal. If the project is going to go forward, we have to comply with MDOT requirements. We did look to see whether an appraisal had been done. We were satisfied, and the township adopted a resolution several years ago to authorize the purchase of the property, and we were satisfied that we were paying a fair price for that property in its current condition without commissioning an appraisal. The estate from whom we bought the property from did not require an appraisal. The probate court that was supervising that estate in Lucas County, Ohio, did not require an appraisal. So that's why an appraisal wasn't done. We were satisfied as a township that that was a fair price to pay for that property and additional property that we will sell and recoup some of that expenditure back from. I can answer any questions.
Part of it is, let's just say the appraisal comes back and because it's going back to 2019, and let's just say we should have paid fair market value, should have been 85. That means you're going to have to go back to the original purchaser and make that whole. Mr. Pryor, you can come on up because he's been dealing with it as well. That's part of the reason why you have to pay fair market value. So that is part of it, right?
Well, and I think Al's had more detailed discussions with the MDOT representatives. I don't think we'll ever have to pay more than what we've already paid. We struck our bargain. We bought it for that amount. We're not going to have to go back and pay additional sums to the seller. We struck our bargain. That was an arm's length bargain between an estate that was represented by legal counsel and between us, and you were represented by Tom Graham and myself as legal counsel. So Al might have some further insight in terms of his discussion with MDOT, but my understanding, it's an MDOT requirement. Whether I agree with it or not is not relevant. I think the price has been set by what we paid, but MDOT does things in a certain way, and they're funding the project to a certain extent, over $1 million now, I think, so.
And plus, whether we have the roundabout or not, if with the property, this is a good thing to have, the appraisal, so.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to the point of purchase. Personally, I think that property is more valuable now to the township because there's been some dangerous structures that have been removed, and to the extent necessary. It wasn't determined to be a brownfield, but it's been remediated through the work with Manick and Smith. So I think the property is probably more valuable than when we first purchased it, but they're measuring it from the point of purchase. MDOT is anyhow, to comply with their requirements for the funding part of this, the MDOT funding part of it.
Did you want to say something before Mr. Pryor gets into?
Yeah, just a couple questions. So, township so far is into it 175,000.
122.
122. Now, if I'm understanding correctly, we're going to title donate $65,000 piece of property to the road commission. Is that what I'm understanding?
There's 2 parcels. There's the parcel that's a landing strip that runs east and west.
Correct.
Off of Jackman, separate parcel. So this parcel, in order to satisfy legal on both ends, for them to have ownership of the roundabout property for the future.
But we paid for that, correct?
Correct.
And how much
We
did
did.
we pay for that?
That's part of our $175,000 contribution to this overall project if you decide to go forward with the project. So, Joe, the important part of this is that's part of our $175,000 contribution. I want to give it to them. I don't want you to have, or the township to have, the liability. We don't do roads. They do.
I understand that. I'm just looking at how much money has already been sunk into this project, and we don't even know that it's even going anywhere. I mean, I've been on the board for 3 years. We've been
122,000, I believe, right in that neighborhood. I think Trudy or Chris.
Well, whether we bought the property or not, just say they bought the property, we would still be contributing 175 on our.
And there was no appraisal done before when it was purchased?
No.
I searched.
It wasn't required.
You should get appraisal when you buy anything if you're buying property.
Not necessarily. We knew that. Well, and Trudy and Krista did research on it as well, and we knew that we were purchasing that property at fair market value, or, in our opinion, less than fair market value.
Probably below.
On the other hand, if we sell the other piece of property, we don't give that back to the road commission either.
No, that's ours. That's not, we acquired that, and it's not going to be used for the roundabout, and anything we are able to sell that for comes back to the township, not to anyone else.
So really, when you look at it in the end, you could roughly say that landing strip is worth roughly 30 to 40,000. You could take that off the 175.
You're 65 even if you cut it in half. And
so if you figure from this point we have 122 in it, you're going to stick another 15,000 into it. Mr. Pryor, go ahead.
Part of the appraisal process, in my research, Ms. Janasek and I, we attended a Zoom meeting where they said part of the reason, too, with MDOT is also we're receiving federal funds.
Correct.
So, and Mr. Prony, correct me if I'm wrong, we did not know about needing an appraisal early on.
We didn't need one. The only reason we need one is because we're giving the property to the road commission.
So once we were informed of that, and Ms. Janasek and I, they were telling us everything we needed to do, they said, well, if you can find us any kind of appraisal, we will take a look at that. Well, I called the attorney that handled the sale. They had nothing. Phil had nothing. I looked back in terms, went to the assessing office, and nobody had done any appraisals, which I was kind of surprised that the other firm didn't do an appraisal themselves for the estate to say, hey, because I think they were due a lot of fees at the time. So once I established there was no existing appraisal from anybody, then what we have to do, the next step, is they give you a list of MDOT appraisers, and you can only go off that list. So then what I did is I took a look and said, okay, what appraisers are within maybe an hour, hour and 15 minutes of our area? Because I really didn't want somebody coming down from Traverse City and that kind of thing. So I sent that out because you have different types of appraisals. There's a current appraisal, which would be the price today. Then there's the retro, which is what's being required. And then they told Ms. Jandisek and I, then you need to have a review appraisal of the first appraiser's work. So that's why in your packet, there's two different appraisals. One's for the review, and then the one is to do the retro. Like I said, we did some extensive research. We couldn't find any appraisals anywhere in terms of this.
And that was MDOT's requirement. That wasn't the road commission's requirement.
Right. Yeah, it was MDOT. We sat there, and they were pretty clear to us that if you don't do this, nothing.
Well, and like before Mr. Goldsmith and the attorneys got together, I mean, it's not a requirement unless you give the property to the road commission. That's when it became a requirement from MDOT.
Well, what I was talking about was having the review of the
the
appraisal.
review.
That's the MDOT's requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So, because you kind of think it's like, well, if you have an appraiser and you're paying them, why do you need a review? But they want a review. So,
in the end, I think either way, roundabout or not, it's good to have this appraisal.
Right.
Our file is documented from the very beginning, right from the inception of the purchase agreement, that we made it clear to the road commission that we would not retain title to the real property or the real estate that becomes eventually the roundabout if this project is finally completed. We just won't, we won't do it.
I think in the process, in the end, when the project was finished, that's when we were going to give the property over to the road commission.
Right.
In the end, that's what the beginning thoughts were.
That's right. That's right. They were, and again, at the beginning, they were resistant to it, but now I think they're okay with it, and they're going to have to be okay with it, because if they're not, I'm not okay with it. But I do not want you, this township, the taxpayers, to have the liability of any roadway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're okay with it. So, comments, questions, Mr. Steiner?
So one of the things that said earlier, as we have clarified in the past, our number was 175,000. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about not spending another dollar on the project, that means we don't spend $175,001. So if we're currently at 122, give or take, we're still well within our means for this $4,000. So with that said, if we're talking about, if anybody's hesitant whether it's a funding issue, I think to me that's a no-brainer. It's whether you believe in the project or not. Dollars are there. We've already allocated that we would spend 175. So now the decision is, do we want to proceed, spend the 175, and then continue on to build a roundabout?
Anybody else?
I mean, I'm not for the roundabout at all, so I'm not going to support any dollars that go for it, so I'm not going to support this. Yep. I think you guys all know that.
I've been supportive of it from the start. I haven't spent as much time on one single project, probably if you added up all the projects with this project. County and the Fed dollars they had money for a roundabout, and they picked that intersection. We didn't go to them and say, hey, we want to put a roundabout in Bedford. They came to us and they specifically looked at that intersection. So I mean, when you look at the studies and you look at the statistics on roundabouts and that intersection, I travel through it 6 times a day, probably even more. It's needed. Dollars aren't there for buying property and moving roads. We've talked about that. We've looked at it. We have $1.1 million towards this project. Already into it. 122. And it's needed for the intersection. I mean, whether you like roundabouts or not, you'll earn it. Just takes a minute. Whether you have to look at it from a perspective of what's best for the community. You have a hazardous area. Am I correct, Sheriff? I mean, it's not the best area when you look at it. It's a goofy setup, and you're going to stick roughly $1.5 million into an intersection, and ours is a 175 of it. To me, it's a no-brainer. To me, it's the best project we have going, and we've had for years. So I've been a huge proponent of it from day one. All the stuff that's said about, Mr. Peroni went and bought the property without board. Not true. You heard it right from Mr. Goldsmith's mouth tonight. The board approved it from start to finish, and you can shake your head back there all you want, but the facts are the fact. The facts is the board purchased the property, and you can speak to it if you want.
Well, the board approved a resolution, adopted a resolution to purchase the property. The purchase agreement was always subject to board approval. You can't buy anything on your own on behalf of the township.
Wow.
It's always subject to board approval, and always was subject to board approval. And if you tried to do it, I'd tell you, you can't do it.
Well, that's why I've been flabbergasted for 6 years straight. We keep hearing, Paul bought the property without board. Okay. So anyway, so that's where I'm at on it. I've been the same since the beginning.
Real quick, just to clarify, the previous board approved to buy the property. And number two, if MDOT and all them want the roundabout, they pay for it, including the 175. If they want it, they pay for it.
And if the project came to us right now, you know what I mean? You could have that thought and attitude of, hey, you want it, you get it. But we entered into something, yes, an old board, which I might say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us were part of that. Well, not you. 4 of us were part of that. We all believed in it and entered into an agreement. 3 managing directors of the road commission have been a part of the project. So I mean, it's been a long time coming. So you're kind of dealing with something from an old board.
You can talk it to death, and I know it's MDOT and this and MDOT that, but they're the ones that put that full crosswalk at Stearns and Telegraph saying we needed the crosswalks at that intersection there. I mean, seriously?
Right.
I mean,
at the end of the day, we have to look at the facts. The fact is we have a bad intersection. The fact is statistics show these are much safer, and we have a huge grant going into an intersection. We turn down this grant, you probably won't see anything happen there for a long, long time. And it is a hazard. And traffic's only going to get worse as time goes on. I mean, that's why we're looking at widening Secor Road. We're looking at safety grants for Stearns Road at certain sections to put a turn lane. Same thing down Smith Road, a turn lane's coming. I mean, we have to continue to seek dollars like this because you get into talking, like Ms. Keene said, of buying property, moving roads, and you're talking big money, and it's so. Either way, I think.
Question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes.
If this roundabout doesn't go through, one, do we need a survey to sell that property?
Do we need an appraisal?
Appraisal to sell that property.
No.
So we know what the value truly is.
We're not required to. We may, if we sell the property that was acquired for it, if there's questions as to what the true market value is, you may decide, okay, let's have a survey or have an appraisal performed, or you could rely upon your assessor, his opinion as to the value of the property, and if you put it up for sale, the market will drive the price too, to a certain extent. Again, the old saying, what a willing buyer will pay a willing seller. So you don't necessarily need it, but it could be useful. It goes back to the 2019 value at the point of purchase, not what the value is today if we were going to sell it if the roundabout didn't go through. I think the property is more valuable today. because it's been improved and it's been remediated to the extent that it needed to be.
Second question, the $175,000 agreement we went into, what happens if we violate that, break it?
That depends, that depends on a lot of different factors, but in part it depends on how vigorous the road commission would want to pursue it. There are defenses to it. If this board decided not to go through with that $175,000 agreement, there are defenses to it, and you'd go back and you'd look at the history of this and view it from that time when the whole project failed because it was the road commission in their analysis undervalued what it would cost to build the project, and therefore the grant application was not sufficient to cover the cost associated with the building of the project in order for us to contribute $175 and them to contribute $175. So if you decided not to go forward, yeah, we can defend that. There's going to be arguments on their side of the coin. You decided to go forward with this project. When it became apparent after some rather heated discussions that the project couldn't go forward because it was undervalued and the appropriate amount, grant amount wasn't applied for, each party at that time, it could be argued on their side, agreed to pause it because those discussions were had, and then to reapply at a future date when the road commission through its engineering department had a better handle on what the actual cost of the project would be, and so that the grant application would reflect that actual cost. And that was done. And the road commission did that and pursued it. The road commission is they're a huge proponent of this. They feel for whatever reason, from their engineering perspective, that the location of a roundabout at that location would serve the public health, safety, and welfare and traffic safety concerns that currently exist there. So they're a big proponent of it. They've pushed it. We've told them. You and I have both told them. We are not, and I've written to them, we are not going to pay any more than the $175. Just as Rick said, if it's $175 and $1, we're not going to pay any more than that. So to the extent that you think you have added costs in this, get that out of your head because we're not paying it. So apparently they've come around to that realization or to that agreement. So that's a really long answer to your question, but it's somewhat complicated because of the history of this.
From my understanding, Trudy, the property as it sits right now is, as a whole, is worth roughly $55,000. And that's from Signature. So, you sell the property, the township's at a $70,000 loss today. So.
Well, I know I've inquired about something different than a roundabout, and the only thing that they could tell me was it could be changed, but it would cost us the money to change it, and we'd be looking at roughly $560,000 to do it. Mm-hmm. Because I couldn't figure out why we need a roundabout. Why couldn't we do something else? Why couldn't we put lights in there, straighten it out just like they did Summerfield Road and do it that way? And they said we could, as long as the township wants to pay the $560,000, they would do that.
It's obvious that the grant is for a roundabout, period.
Yeah.
So other than that, they're not going to give us a dime for some other avenue, as you said. That's where it comes back to us. If we want to do something, we pay full price.
And that was how many years ago, Trudy?
That I asked about that? Just a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago. Things have changed a lot in 2 years. Plus, there was no real hard study done of that. That was just saying, yeah, it can be done. I mean, we don't know if properties would match up, if we'd have to buy more properties, if they'd be willing to sell to make it happen. So there's a lot of what ifs to that.
We would still have to donate that property because the road would still run down that
Right,
property.
you would, the property.
Either way, we're going to have to, no matter what we do there, we're going to have to donate that property because a road will go through that property. Right. Whether we make it straight, whether we do a roundabout, that property will have to be donated so that we don't have the liability.
And we will recoup some of our costs by the sale of the property that's not necessary for roadway use or right of way. That will come back to
Which
the
is
township.
roughly 30 to 40,000.
Somewhere in that vicinity, based upon fair market value, I would agree with that. The problem is, and Trudy did research it, maybe not a problem, the reality is that MDOT has, in its collective mindset, that roundabouts are the way to go. And that they're willing to fund a roundabout because they're promoting roundabouts throughout the state of Michigan at various locations and various units of government. So they'll fund that, but if they're, as Trudy found out when she investigated, that they won't fund some alternate intersection for them there. So not telling you what to do or how to do it, except on the legal advice that we've provided, it's boiling down to a policy decision on your part now. I think Rick and Trudy said it best. It's what the board at this point in time feels is in the best interest of the township, whether to proceed or not proceed with this project.
I don't know if anybody on this board would necessarily choose a roundabout as the solution to that intersection. But I also don't think, I would hope, that there's not anyone on this board who sees that intersection and thinks it's great as is, or would love to just, that my view of the whole project is I can't in good conscience leave that intersection in the state that it's been. It shouldn't have been in the state that it's been for the last 4 years or whatever it's been. That's just been forever, just been an eyesore and a nightmare. And that's the thing. There's certainly better solutions to fixing that intersection, but none that anyone's given us $1 million for.
1.1.
And somebody's giving you $1 million and saying, this is the way they want you to do it. Cost you, like I said, as of now, if we're at 122, and then minus 30 when we get it back, you pay $100 grand.
75 minus
100 grand for a $1 million plus project to maybe not the perfect solution. I don't think anybody would argue that. Not the perfect solution, but definitely a better situation than it's been for a very, very long time. I think of it similar to the maintenance building. Gosh, you're going to spend a lot of money to get that maintenance building, but outside of ARPA funds, I don't know. That's a problem with that maintenance building on Lewis Avenue that I don't know what the solution is, and you're given an opportunity to solve a problem with maybe not the perfect solution, but it solves your problem.
Well, just so you know, the funding, it'd be 175 minus the 35 if we got that for the landing strip, so you'd be at 140.
Okay.
All in.
But still. But yeah, with that being said, I will, unless there's anybody else, I will. We can sit here and talk about it all night probably.
Make a motion.
I'm assuming, just by the way that this was laid out, there's a lot in here, and maybe Al can clarify. This is I would make a motion to accept. We're accepting sharers' approval that they would do both the first and the second. Sharer would do.
I think it's Jay, Jama.
This would be the first.
She was like around 2,100 or something, Kristen.
2,100 for the Jumana.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'd go with her first, and then after she's done, then Shearer would review that work.
1,500.
Do those need to be separate?
I don't think they need to be separate, but I think we need to
Clarify
which one is which.
So accept the Jumana Judah for the first one for 2,100, and the second, or what do they call it? The review portion from Share not to exceed 2,500.
And Jamada Judah not to exceed her quote of 2,100.
Second one is only 1,500.
15 for sure.
Oh, okay, I got you. So not to exceed 15 for Share, not to exceed 21 for Judah for the first one.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Any more discussion? Okay. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
No.
Mr. Bruning?
No.
Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 5-2. Thank you, Al, for doing all the work, and Krista, appreciate it. Okay, moving on to comments from the public. Comments limited to 2 minutes for each individual.
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. First off, it's very disappointing to hear the aye votes. Whether we have the money or not, it was not good, and the guilt falls onto the board members who first did not listen to legal, and secondly, did not look at other options. We have a copy of the purchase agreement, so I'm nodding my head because I have my facts. The other thing is we shouldn't just do it because we have the money. It started at Smith and Secor is where it was supposed to go. The Road Commission wants this to happen because they want more of them, and that's what's going to happen. You're going to put this one in, and it's going to cause a downfall to both directions, where more of these are going to have to be put in. If you look at your CMAQ and the reasons for why you get a CMAQ grant, there is options for the air mitigation using a CMAQ grant other than a roundabout. The problem is that nobody's willing to do it. They just lay back, take the easy way, and vote yes. I know how I'm voting. I would vote no. But who's going to own it, MDOT or the Road Commission? And the other thing is that those three bids, the board should have been picking that. I think that's the process, that we get three bids, and I know that it was a set group of people. But, yeah, this isn't the right thing to do. I'm sorry. It just isn't. And we know for a fact that Mr. Pollock has been approached for his funeral home to buy that strip, and that's been said publicly. So, yes, it's been promised.
Lamar Frederick, 3254 Deer Creek Drive. Mr. Peroni, I'm going to bring one more point up at this meeting. With respect to the construction of the maintenance garage, I recommend that you look at your own builder's risk. We did that on the library, and we don't have to go look at his business risk, builder's risk. We looked at our own, and we brought people down immediately, and they pointed out who was wrong. So you look to your own insurance company if there's a builder's risk issue. Secondly, now, like the prodigal son, here comes a roundabout again. Whatever you do, remember in November of 2024, those who you want to sit in the same seat that you're sitting in now, you will be judged by how that project goes forward. You will be judged by the mess at the intersection. You will be judged by what you say about that. So all I say is, if you want to run again and you want to support this thing, there will be folks who will run against you. There will be citizens who will be totally pissed at all of you, because that's what you're doing. Think about it.
Josh Nearcore, 7948 Wiseman or Lambertville. First thing, congrats to Chief on the new hires. Like to see, like the high level service that the fire department provides, and like to continue to see that grow. Other thing too, I know some of you may know or hear about it, but like there's countries such as like China that are buying land here in the U.S. and other states, and then including this battery plant that's coming to Michigan that the Chinese Communist Party has its hands in. I want to ask Phil if there's any advice or anything he knows as far as any protections that we could put in place as a township to keep foreign adversaries such as China buying land in the township. So if there's any answers to that, thanks.
Okay, any more comments from the public? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Steiner?
Just one thing tonight, since we're going to be later in the month for the next meeting, everybody, I think next Monday is a good date that we all need to sit back and reflect on and remember, because next Monday is 9/11. So something really to reflect on and what happened on that day. I thought it was interesting that we have some new firefighters starting on 9/11. So welcome them aboard, Chief, and let them know that we appreciate that they know what it's all about. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Montry?
Nothing for me.
Okay, Mr. Gore?
Today was the first day of school down here in Bedford. Hope all the kids got to school safe. And just reminding the citizens to please, please, please watch out for the school buses and make sure you are stopping for the school bus flashing lights, the red lights.
Mr. Rooney?
Nothing going on. Everyone have a good week, good weekend. Go Mules and go Blue.
Ms. Janizar?
Just a reminder that summer taxes are due on Thursday, September 14th. On Friday, interest will start to accrue on any unpaid balances. If you cannot make it into the building during our business hours, we do have a drop box on the south side of the building next to our drive-up window where you can drop off your payments. I would also like to echo what Mr. Gore said about schools. I hope everyone had a great start to the year and hope they have a good school year. And please, like he said, please pay attention to the buses. And if you see the red lights, just stop. Thank you.
Ms. Hirschberger?
Want to remind everyone that there is a school election on November 7th. We are getting the applications ready to be mailed out. Ballots will not be available until September 28th. If you're not registered, please stop in my office and you can get registered. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. And also echoing schools in session, I got to see my grandson go on the bus his first day, and I can't tell you how many cars. He's a little kindergartner standing by Erie Road, and the cars just flying by. They're not slowing down, and all these little kids are standing there waiting for the bus. Of course, there's parents there, but still, you're flying by. Who says that one of these kids might jot or something once they see that bus? So if you see kids standing, maybe slow down a little bit. Don't go flying by, because kids have a tendency to see something and just take off. That's it.
Well, I'll add something on the school buses. If you pass a school bus and it's blinking red, I think you're a total idiot. So that's just from me to you. I can't imagine being that stupid to pass a bus when kids are walking. Unreal. And it happens every flippin' day. So, unbelievable. You can keep the scare tactics. This board and previous boards make decisions every week that upsets people. If they were so upset about the roundabout, where are they at? There's 2 people in here upset about the roundabout, so, and a couple board members. But we have to make tough decisions, and sometimes it might not be exactly what we want, but it's the best option for the citizens. We have to do things that benefit the citizens as a whole, and we have to take opportunities when they come, because $1.1 million grants don't come in this community every single day. They don't come every single year. So I think we made a great decision tonight to keep this thing moving forward. Obviously, our board has set our guns. I disagree with the board. I'd be willing to pay more than the $175, but this board has set it, and we're sticking to it. And I think in the end, it's going to be a great project. Are people going to be mad when you close a road down? Yeah. Yeah, the funeral home's going to have to figure something out for a time being, and it's not a 2-year-long project. I think it's 3 months, and they're going to try to keep it open through the construction process. It's going to affect Bedford Hills, depending on what time we start and finish the project. So, yeah, it's going to affect residents. People will be upset, but I can tell you this: over the 6 years, roughly, I've been dealing with this project, the vast majority of people I talk to want the project. So, Banner Oak Potluck, September 11th at 1. Bring a dish. If you don't know where Banner Oak School is, it's at Crab and Stearns at the corner. Great group of people put that on and maintain that building and keep some fun activities going. So, recommend you check it out. Cornerstone, at Mr. Pryor's part of that group. They're doing a 100-mile ride coming through Bedford Township this Saturday. If you're interested in that, it starts at 7 and it starts out at Monroe Community College. You can register the day of the event if you want to, but you can register up till then, and it starts at 7. If you want to If you are interested, you can go to www.mccornertone100.org and get involved in that. Other than that, it's been a very busy few weeks, a lot going on in the community. We continue to work on the sidewalks. We're dealing with Manica Smith right now to get some easements in place for Jackman Road, and going to continue to keep moving forward. I believe the concrete job at Station 3 is going out for bid, so that'll be hopefully a spring project. I would assume so. A lot of activity with our maintenance in the parks. We're trying to continue to keep them up and look at detail when we utilize it, do our parks, and they're doing a great job. We've tried out seasonal employees, and we have a lot of good employees, and so things are moving very smooth. And so appreciate all the hard work they do that they put into our parks. And so if anybody else has anything else they'd like to add, okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourned.